Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet your own Chevron Stripe Mug Rug. This is a free pattern that you'll find on mooglyblog.com. You can look for the link in the description or go to your favorite search engine and simply type in Moogly Chevron Mug Rugs, and it should pop right up. Now, when I originally made this pattern, I used a yarn that is now discontinued. So my recommended substitute is Lily Sugar and Cream in any two colors that you enjoy. To make this pattern, I also used a USI 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. This one is by Furls. I also recommend having a few stitch markers handy as we make this design. Let's get started. This pattern uses a couple of different techniques that you might not have encountered before. First of all, we've got a treble crochet 2 together. Those are those tall stitches you can see right here, and we'll be going over how to make those as we make this tutorial. I want to point out that the written pattern also includes a diagram with a sample of the stitch pattern. So if you find it easier to follow along with the chart, then that is available as well. One other unusual thing about this pattern is that it uses 2 active loops, one for each color of yarn. So this is where those stitch markers come in really handy to secure the loop you're not using so it doesn't come out as you work. Now, as I mentioned, this pattern uses 2 active loops, which means we're going to be working with both colors sort of in turn, but we're not going to finish off one stitch with the other. We're going to leave an active loop and come back to it. This does a couple of really fun things. It allows us to make this really great chevron pattern without having to add any border. Look closely, you'll see we still see our stripes here along the edge. We also change color every 2 rows, and you can see what this looks like from behind. It's not the right side, but it's still a good looking side. And of course, we have fringe here you can see, and fringe, as always, is optional. If you prefer to leave it off or just do the 4 corners or some other look, it's totally up to you. Now, let's get stitching. So, to begin, we take our first color, whichever color you want to make color A, put a slip knot on our hook, and chain 16. So now I've made 16 chains. To begin row 1, we're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each of the next 2 chains. So that means we're going to skip the chain closest to the hook and single crochet in the next 2 chains after that. I prefer to work into the underneath hump of the chain rather than under the top 2 loops. I find that this gives me a more nice, just finished edge, especially in a project like this where we're not working a border. So let's see. We have single crocheted in the second chain from the hook. In the next one, we've got one more. So we should start with 3 here. After we skip that chain closest to the hook, we've got 3 single crochets. Then we begin our repeat that begins with the asterisk. So now we're going to chain 1, skip the next chain, and single crochet in the next 3. And we'll repeat that all the way across. So let's do that together. We chain 1, skip the next stitch, and single crochet in the next 3. There's 1, 2, and 3. Straighten that out, and we can see what that looks like right there. We do it again. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet in the next 3. 1, 2, get under all the strands there. 2 and 3. And we've got 4 stitches left, so we can do that repeat one more time. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet in the last 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. There we go. So now, give that a little tug to straighten it all out. There we go. And this is what it should look like at the end of row 1. Now we're ready for row 2. So we want to turn as we begin row 2. Now you have a choice. You can either chain 3, which is your standard double crochet substitute, or if you prefer, you can pull up a loop here and make a chainless starting double crochet. I prefer this method, but of course you can chain 3. It's a perfectly acceptable way to substitute for a double crochet as well. To make the chainless starting double crochet, I'm going to pull up my loop to the height of a double crochet, Secure the top of the loop with my finger, yarn over with the loop itself, insert my hook right in that first stitch, yarn over, pull a loop up through the stitch, yarn over again and pull through that loop and behind our yarn over. Then I can yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. Again, if you prefer, a standard chain 3 works just as well. After that, we simply double crochet in each stitch across to the end. That includes our chain spaces. So with those skipped chains we had on the first row, we had a total of 12 single crochets that we actually made. But because we're working into our chain spaces here for row 2, we're going to go back to having 15 stitches all the way across. So you should have a total of 15 double crochets when you get to the end of row 2. So here I have finished row 2. The last step of row 2 is to remove the hook from the loop and place a marker in the open color A loop. So that means I'm going to pull up this loop big, grab one of my stitch markers, and put it right through that loop. This will secure that loop there so that my stitches can't come undone while I'm coming in with the other color. One other thing that you might find helpful at this point that is completely optional is to take a few extra stitch markers and mark where those chain 1 spaces were that you sort of, when you crocheted into the chain 1 space, when you've got those chains back down here that you skipped. We know we've got one, we worked 3, then we skipped 1, so we can put one there. And this is just a visual cue for later here as we begin our next row. Got another one right here. Oop, get all the way in there. And then we've got another one right there. So you should have 3 of those chain 1 skip ones left behind there in row 1. So now we're ready to begin row 3. And we are going to go ahead and turn our work. So we've got our secured loop right there, and we've turned our work to the other side. I'm going to bring in my color B. I'm going to use up some green that I have left over from another project. These mug rugs are, of course, a wonderful stash buster. So now we've got our color B, and we want to join with a single crochet in the first stitch. So that's going to be that first stitch right there. So I'm going to put that aside for just a second. In order to join with a single crochet, my favorite way to do it is to twist the yarn to create a loop like so, or you can make a slip knot if you prefer and put that right onto our hook. Personally, I prefer to avoid extra knots when I can, but for a project like a mug rug, it's perfectly fine. It's more important when you're working something like a sweater. So go ahead and put a knot or a loop on your hook. Pick up our project here. We're going to insert our hook right in that very first stitch. And yarn over and pull up our loop. Give it a little zhuzh, get those loops down close to each other again. And then we can yarn over and pull through to finish our single crochet. If you find that that stitch there is pulling up loose, you can just give a little tug on your loops down here to tighten it right back up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be working in front of the previous row. So that means in front of row 2. And we're going to treble crochet in the first skipped chain of that foundation row. So what does that mean? Treble means we yarn over twice, and then we'll still work those loops off 2 at a time. But we're going to work it in that first skipped stitch. So this is where having that stitch marker there can be really handy. Or if you don't need it, just look really close. It's be underneath that 4th stitch right down here. And we're going to work right into that unused loop. So you can take that stitch marker out of the way if it wants to be in the way. I think this one wants to be in the way. Come back down here and pick up the loop on that chain. You can see this one wants to be a little difficult. Sometimes having a slightly sharper hook may help with that. There we go. Got into that chain. Just wanted to be difficult today. We pull up our loop and we can work those off 2 at a time. Yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So we have finished our first treble crochet there for row 3. Now what we're going to do is skip the next stitch, which is of course the stitch behind our treble right there. And then we are going to single crochet in the stitch after that. There we are. So we've worked 3 stitches, a single crochet in the first stitch, we trebled down to that first skipped stitch, skip the stitch behind it, and single crochet in the next stitch from row 2. Then we are going to we've single crocheted in the next stitch, we chain 1. There we go. Skip the next stitch, and single crochet in the stitch after that. Then, for this row, we finally begin the section that begins with our asterisk. So this begins our repeat that takes us most of the way across our row here. And of course, on our coaster or mug rug, it is a short little row indeed. So we start with a treble crochet 2 together in the previous skipped chain of the foundation row and the next skipped chain of the foundation row. So let's break that up. Treble crochet 2 together. We know it's going to be a decrease generally in crochet. When it's a 2 together, has 2 legs, and our legs are going to go into this one back here that we worked into before, and then the next skipped stitch over there. We're going to create that big sort of upside down V or carrot shape. So let's begin. We yarn over twice for a treble. Come back over here. That loop should be pretty easy to find now. We're working in front of the previous row, so we just pick up that loop. We're not trying to enclose any other stitches in here. Pull our loop up through that stitch, and then we work our loops off 2 at a time. Yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, but then we stop when there are two loops left on our hook. There we go. Then we need to start our other leg, so we yarn over twice again, and now we're coming over to this stitch. And again, we can get that stitch marker out of there if it wants to be in the way. It's done its job. Take our time, pick up that loop. Always, this is genuinely the hardest part of this whole pattern, is just coming back and giving that first row of loops. After that, it's easy peasy. There we go. Yarn over and pull up our loop. Now we can yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over and pull through 2. Now we're down to 3 loops left on the hook. So we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops to finish our treble crochet 2 together. And we're starting to establish that chevron pattern. So after we've gotten that made, we're going to skip the stitch behind it and single crochet in the stitch after that. There we go. Then we are going to chain 1 again, skip the next stitch, and single crochet in the stitch after that. And that is our repeat. Now on our short little coaster, that means we only have to do it 1 more time. So let's do it together. We're going to yarn over twice, go back to that previous skipped loop, the one that's easy now because we pulled it up with the last stitch, or at least a little easier. There we go. Get through that, pull up our loop, and start working those off 2 at a time until we get down to 2 loops left on our hook. There we go. Now we know it's time for the other leg. So we yarn over twice, come over here to this skipped stitch, pull the stitch marker out of there ahead of time if you need to. Otherwise, we can just get in there as best we can. Looks like I'm going to need to pull it up. There we are. It's just these 3 chains that like to be difficult. After this, it really does get so much easier. But we just have to take our time and work into those 3. There we are. Pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Now we've got 3 loops left on our hook, so we yarn over and pull through all 3 to finish off that treble crochet 2 together. So we know we're going to skip the stitch behind it, single crochet in the stitch after that, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and single crochet in the stitch after that. Now, if we look back at our work here, we can see there's only 2 stitches left. So we have finished our repeats. We're going to treble crochet in the last skipped chain of the foundation row. Remember, we had this one kind of out here by itself. To begin our row, we need to cap it off the same way on this side. So we yarn over twice, come right back to that same loop that we worked the second half of the previous one in, and now we can yarn over and keep working off our loops till we get back down to 1 loop on our hook, like so. We're going to skip the stitch behind it and single crochet in the very last stitch of the row. So that will be the top of your chain 3 or the top of your chainless starting double crochet. But this is what it should look like after you have finished row 3. For row 4, we're back to working another row of double crochet. So you can start with the chain 3 or the chainless starting double crochet, whichever you prefer. But again, we want to make sure to work into each stitch and each chain space so that we have a total of 15 double crochets at the end of row 4. So now I have finished row 4 and we're back to having 15 double crochets. Now I'm going to do the same thing that I did at the end of row 2. I'm going to pull up this loop and secure it with a stitch marker. I also went back and put a stitch marker in the first stitch of the row, which just makes it easier when I come back the other direction. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drop these, and we want to pick up these loops from color A. So one thing you'll want to note is these cool chevrons are on the right side. So right now we're looking at the wrong side. So we want to kind of pull our unused color, if you will, to the back as we begin working with this color so that any color changes go on the back of our coaster. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this loop here so I can reinsert my hook right back here in color A, or our first color, and tighten that up. Now I am going to work a chain of 3. 1, 2, and 3. This chain of 3 isn't going to count as a stitch. It's not going to be a double crochet. I wouldn't use a double crochet substitute. It is a traveling chain 3. If we bring in our finished coaster here, you'll see it right here. This is just to bring us up to the next row. It creates sort of a border loop all on its own. So go ahead and do an actual chain 3 right here. Now, and if you haven't already turned, we're going to go ahead and turn and then single crochet in the first stitch of the previous row. So again, I can kind of hold these loops back here out of the way and work our first single crochet right into the top of that first stitch of the row. And then I can put my stitch marker right in the top of that first stitch of the row if I like. There we go. And that just creates its own nice little border there. After that, we are going to again work in front of the previous row and treble crochet in the first skipped double crochet of the row below the previous row. So what does that mean? Well, do you remember where we skipped stitches? This time it's a little easier to see. It's going to be right in the center of those V's. We've got one there, and one there. So that is sort of our goal stitch now when we're working this row. So we yarn over twice for a treble crochet. And now we can see right where there is an unworked double crochet. So much easier, as you can see, to get our hook right in there, yarn over and pull up a loop, and work right in front of those previous rows. Yarn over and pull through 2 until we've worked that treble off all together, like so. Then we are going to, of course, skip the stitch behind the treble, single crochet in the stitch after that, like so. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the stitch after that. Sounds pretty familiar, right? It's just like we did on row 2, but this time we needed to do some chaining to bring ourselves up along the side. So now you can see, we can look at our previous rows and even see right where we're at. It's time for a treble crochet 2 together. So we're going to yarn over twice, come back to that previous spot. I like to use my hook to sort of pull that stitch forward. Makes it a little easier to get in there. Yarn over and pull up my loop, and then we work those off until we have 2 loops left on our hook, like so. Yarn over twice again, and find the next one over here, right in the center of that V. So much easier. Like I say, it's a real bummer that so often working to the chain is right up front, because so often it's the hardest part, right? Now we're down to 3 loops left on our hook. We yarn over, pull through all 3, and we finish that stitch. We want to skip the stitch behind it. If we don't skip the stitch behind it, we'd end up increasing, and we don't want that. Single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the stitch after that. Time for one more treble crochet 2 together. Yarn over twice, go back to that previous stitch there that we worked into. Pull up our loop, and we start working those off until we have 2 loops left on our hook. There we go. Yarn over twice again, find that last one. Pull up that loop, yarn over, pull up our loop through there. We work these loops off in pairs until we have 3 left. Then we yarn over and pull through all 3 to finish. Skip the stitch behind this one, single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the stitch after that, and then we can look at our work and see what's missing. What do we need to finish our design? One more treble going this way. Yarn over twice, Come right back down to that stitch, pull up a loop, and go ahead and finish up your treble. Like so. When we skip the stitch behind it, that should give us one stitch left to work into to finish off our row with a single crochet. There we go. Having that stitch marker really does make it a little bit easier to know exactly where to finish up. So now we have finished row 5. And as you might have guessed, for round 6, we're simply going to double crochet in each stitch and chain space across, bringing us back to a total of 15 double crochets. So now I have finished row 6, a simple row of double crochets. And we know when we work a row of double crochets, it's time to pull up our loop and secure it because we're going to turn and do another row with our treble crochets. And those last 2 rows we did are the repeat that we do to make the entirety of our coaster. We simply repeat rows 5 and 6, switching colors every 2 rows until we've made a total of 12 rows. If we go back to the original here, you can see what that looks like. Now, this is a yarn substitution. So the Lily Sugar and Cream is what's currently available, and I do recommend. You can see it has just a slightly bigger gauge than the Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie that I originally used. But we get the same great pattern. And of course, that's the great thing about a mug rug. Size doesn't matter. But we're just going to keep repeating those last 2 rows until we have the length we want, and then we're ready for row 13. Now, on the full-sized coaster, I do have you end with the same color we began with, but on our little demo here, I'm going to go and ahead and pretend that we're done with our purple color here, and we really want to finish it off with our green. So at this point, when you're ready for row 13, you can go ahead and cut your yarn and secure the color of yarn that you're not going to be finishing up with. So in my case, that's going to be the purple. Again, I like to sort of have symmetry and end it usually with the same color, but it's your project. You can do it however you like. And if it's a true scrap project with lots of colors, then it doesn't really matter at all. So now we are all set up to work our row 13 repeat. Now I do like to kind of reinsert my hook from this side. So let me get my stitch marker out of that active loop. So we want to get whatever color we're going to be finishing up our coaster with here. Oop, get that on the correct direction. When we put our loop back in a hook, and this is important in a project, especially like this where we've got lots of active loops and we're taking our hook out of it a lot, it's important that we pull back down. Let me get this in a nice clear spot here. When we pull back down on our working yarn, you can see the portion of the loop that moves back down into the stitch is in front of my hook towards me. That's the direction we want our loop to be on our hook so we don't have any twists showing up in our final project. So now that I've got my hook in my loop and I'm ready to begin row 13, we're going to do a chain of 3 again. Remember, that's what lifts us up for our height. So now we can turn and we're all set up. And I'm going to work a single crochet in the first stitch of the previous row. Here we are. Of course, I can tuck that end to the back here when it's time to weave in our ends. There we go. And then I am going to work a treble crochet in the first skipped double crochet of the row below the previous row. So just like we were doing before, I want to treble crochet. Now it's going to be right there. We can find our skipped double crochet. So much easier than those little chains. And this is the first one, so we work this one off completely. Skip the stitch behind it, single crochet in the next, just as the same as the ones we've been doing before, but now we're not going to chain one and skip one. We don't want to leave it open. We want to close this area off since it's our final row. So instead we'll single crochet in it and single crochet in again. So now we'll have 3 single crochets sort of in the middle of our treble crochet decreases here. So now it is time for the first one of those. So we yarn over twice, come back to that stitch, pull up our loop, pull it forward, however makes it easier for you. Yarn over and pull up our loop and start working off our loops in pairs here till we have 3 left. Or excuse me, till we have 2 left. Then we yarn over twice, come over here, got to earn that 3rd loop. Pull up our stitch, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Now we're down to 3. We yarn over and pull through 3 to finish. We still want to skip the stitch behind the treble crochet 2 together. We don't want to add any increases at this point. But now we single crochet in the next 3 stitches. So 1, There's 2 and 3. And then we treble crochet 2 together again. Yarn over twice, come back to that previous stitch. Here we are. We want to take our time to get just the top of that stitch there on our hook before we yarn over and pull through. We yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over twice again, and find that final unworked stitch there. You can, of course, make this pattern all in one color, but changing colors like this makes it a whole lot easier to find that spot right there, doesn't it? Skip the stitch behind it, single crochet in the next 3. 1, 2, 3. We've got 2 stitches left, so we know we need our final treble crochet down here to cap things off. Make sure we have our symmetry. So work those loops off 2 at a time here. We can work all the way through this one because it's not a decrease. Skip the stitch behind it and single crochet in that very last stitch. Now, because this is our final row, we don't need to work another row of double crochets after that. This gives us this really beautiful final capped off row right here. So after that, you can break your yarn, weave in the ends, and all that's left is to add the fringe. All right, so as I've mentioned before, the fringe is completely optional, but it is a lot of fun. So the way I like to add fringe to this project is if you want to do the full set of fringe, you'll need about 40 pieces of yarn. If you want to do just the corners, it would be 5, 10, 20 pieces of yarn, I guess. However many you like to make your fringe look the way you'd like. It could be full, it can be sort of loose, it's whatever you like. But I'm going to measure out a few pieces of yarn that are about 6 inches long. And this doesn't need to be done with a ruler. I like to do a first one with a ruler, but after that, I just lay them out next to each other. We'll want to trim those off to all be even when we're done anyway. So you'll want to cut these a little longer than you want your finished trim to be, a little longer than twice what you want your trim to be, just to leave room for the knot and to leave room to trim it all up nicely when we're done. Okay, so after you've got the pieces cut that you want to attach to your project, we find where we want to attach to our project. You can see here on the original, I put 5 groups of fringe on each end, 1 on each corner, and then sort of right in the middle of those V's or right at the point, depending on how you're looking at it. So looking at this one, this would be a great spot to place a bit of fringe. Now, you have to give a little bit of thought, and inevitably, I always do it wrong the first way round, and I have to do it again. It's kind of like plugging in a USB. If you want these strands of yarn that sort of wrap around the top here to be on the right side, with it looking like this in the back, then you need to come from behind with your hook. This is the part that I always have to redo and think through. After you've inserted your hook from behind, from the wrong side, we find the middle of our strands of yarn, our little tassel or our fringe here. We put that middle right over our hook. We're going to trim it, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but we want to get close and pull through our project where we want it applied, like so. Now what we want to do is grab all these ends right here and pull them through this loop. So you can do that a couple of ways. You can try and do it with your hook. I find it's usually too much for my hook. I like to use my fingers. I'm going to set that aside here where it won't keep rolling on me. Open this up just a little bit more and use my fingers to pull all these ends right on through. Whole lot easier typically than with the hook. Now, as I pull down, straight down on those ends and sort of push up on that center section here, you can see we get a really appealing sort of strap or overlay of the yarn right there. It gives it a really nice finished look. And on the other side, you can see we've got that look right there. So that's the difference between pulling through from the back versus the front. If you're getting that look in front, remember, bring your hook up from behind the work to pull those loops through. Like I say, it throws me off every single time, so don't be upset if it throws you off too. Once you've got all those applied, you can see now we've got too much fringe. We wanted that 6 inches so we had enough room to pull it through with our fingers, but now it is too much. So when you've got the fringe all applied, I wouldn't recommend doing these one at a time. I'd add all of them across. So you can take your ruler and lay a really nice line across them. Then you can trim them all off really evenly. Couple of different ways you can do that. Again, this is a mug rug. It's just a fun project. If it's just for you or, for the fun of making, you can definitely use your scissors and just trim across right here. What I like to do, and what I would recommend, especially if you're making these for craft fairs or for fundraisers or to sell, is that after you've made all the fringe and you've laid it out really nicely, take your time, make sure there's no, wrinkles or anything in there, then you can take your ruler and you'll want to get one of those cutting mats, put it underneath everything, put your mug rug and ruler on top of the cutting mat, and then you can press down with your ruler. A nice metal ruler like this is great, and use a rotary cutter to just cut right through the ends of all those tassels and fringes, and you'll get a really beautiful, even result. And that's how to crochet the Chevron Stripe Mug Rugs. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you'll give this free crochet pattern a try. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know what you think you should see next on Moogly.